Welcome to the Rising Society podcast. I am Shane Kennedy.
I'm Nico Galliano, the rejected gentleman.
And tonight we are joined by a very special guest from the other side of the world. Well, originally from our side of the world, but lives on the other side of the world, at least for now. And he's a world traveler. He's far better traveled than Nico is.
Correct.
He's far more cultured than Nico is.
Correct.
So I'm going to go ahead and turn the floor over to Justin.
Well, thanks for having me here.
So explain to us where you are living right now, and explain to us what you're doing.
So I'm currently living in Taiwan, and I do many things over there, but the thing that I'm most excited about right now is I've been working on setting up an export company. So we're sourcing things from the South Pacific and bringing them into you all.
I like it.
Yeah. So right here we have one of the products that we are bringing in, which is a very, very interesting historical root. It goes back thousands of years. It started out in Vanuatu, and it's called Kava. And it's become a very popular thing out here in Florida, but most people don't know the traditions behind it. And so I'll share a little bit of that and hopefully get you all a little bit kava buzzed.
Like that.
Yeah.
Well, and you know something, one of the things that I'd like to see is for kava to become a new part of everyone's Christmas tradition. You know? Mm-hmm. You know how a lot of people, they'll have like a big roast beef or something, you know, and or like they'll start cracking open the presents a couple days early. They all have their own little individual Christmas traditions. Well, It would be really nice if during the 12 days of Christmas, if people would start having a kava drink each to commemorate each one of those 12 days of Christmas.
And then
it'd be beautiful.
We want to pour it, try, and then him kind of explain what it actually is, like go into it a little.
Yeah. And so actually last Christmas I spent in the southern part of an island called Pentecost in Vanuatu. And this is the place where kava allegedly started. So before you drink it, we are going to do something, or I'll explain what will normally happen. Here you go, Shane.
You got to hold your bowl, Shane.
It's okay.
Coconut.
I got it.
A little coconut.
So I was drinking kava in Vanuatu this time last year, roughly.
So we're drinking kava out of real coconuts, too.
It's awesome.
These real coconut shells. These are not imitation. So
I can attest they are not plastic.
So most people in the U.S. at kava bars, they would say bula, but in Vanuatu, they usually say malok. And that means, depending on who you ask, it's like a thankfulness to the creator. And they'll face east. I don't really understand why. They'll usually pour out a little bit for their ancestors to out of respect, but we won't do that because, you know.
Well, so facing east would be facing this way.
Yeah.
Correct. And what's the word one more time?
Malok.
Malok. And why do we say it differently in the States?
Well, so they would normally say bula, and that's a Fijian tradition.
Oh,
so
Fijian, okay.
in Fiji they say bula, which I think roughly translates to hello or cheers in both. But correct me if I'm wrong out there in the comments. But that was my understanding. I visited both places, but I really wanted to see where it came from. So I specifically went to the island where this stuff, according to anthropologists, came from, Pentecost. They also have an interesting tradition there where they make these platforms, maybe like 30, 40 feet high, and they tie vines to their legs, and they actually do natural bungee jumping.
That's insane.
Really?
That sounds wild.
I met somebody whose father actually died as a result of it. The Queen of England had come to observe, and the father was kind of I don't know, just sort of a little bit overconfident that day. And yeah.
Is this island part of the Commonwealth?
I believe it might technically be sort of associated with the Commonwealth, but they gained their independence, I think, back in the 80s.
Okay.
Yeah, so they were a joint, they called it a condominium government. The French and the English jointly ruled them. So people had the choice, do I want to send my kids to a French or an English school? Do I want to go to an English or a French court to be tried? It was very interesting and confusing, and it's a very small place, but it's one of these unique kind of exceptions where two imperial powers said, let's not really fight over this. Let's just kind of...
Well, the important thing is that it makes sense to them. It makes sense to the people that live there.
Absolutely.
Yeah. It was very strange because you'd go to one village and they would speak English, and the village right over was speaking French. So it'd be like English, French, French, English, English, French. And they all speak their own native languages too. And a kind of they call it a pidgin English.
Okay. Kind of like what they speak in Hawaii and...
It's similar. It's I don't think it's the exact same. It's more similar to what they speak in Solomon Islands and Papua New Guinea. Mm-hmm. But yeah, and I kind of learned a little bit of that before I went. I'm not super good at it, but I can understand a bit of it and kind of get a message across. So that was All
right, so are we ready to turn to the east?
Yeah, let's turn to the east. Where's the east? Which way is that?
This way. So and for all the Latin freaks out there, ad orientem is the way that you would say toward the east in Latin, right?
Okay.
All right.
Yep. So we're going to turn our way to the Orient, and we're going to have a sip.
All right.
Another cool fact.
Malok.
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 When I forgot to mention this, you're supposed to down the whole thing at once. You'll see why.
Oh, are you really?
Oh yeah.
I did not know
just
that.
Down it.
I just had everything I'm going to have.
Yeah.
I might nurse it.
Sure.
That's weird that you're not going to down it.
Well, I'm going to nurse it because I've got a few other things going on here.
Well, you're going to knock it over.
Here. I'm going to move it. I'm going to move it to the center of my little trifecta.
Okay.
So that means Nico gets to have the full experience then, if he wants it.
Okay.
How do you feel?
I feel fine. Am I supposed to not feel fine?
That means it's time for another one.
Yeah, that means you need to have some more.
Wait, why didn't you finish yours?
Well, because I'm nursing it. I'm going to be working on it. Okay, so
You want some, Nico?
I'm going to wait for a
wait?
second.
So,
appreciate it.
what are the traditions? So what are some of the other traditions surrounding kava? Well, you know what? Actually, here before that,
I'll tell you the kava story.
Here before that. So geographically, what are kind of the boundaries of what we would call like the kava region? So like what would be considered the northernmost place that kava is a part of the culture, the southernmost place, easternmost place, westernmost place?
Okay, so it started out in Vanuatu, spread over to Fiji. I think I could be wrong on this, but I know for probably at least 3,000, maybe 4,000 years, it's been drank in Vanuatu. I mean, I'm probably way off on that, but it's thousands of years. At some point, they traded it to Fiji, and it seems like they traded them a little bit of a weaker strain, but they were trading whatever. It also made its way up to the Solomon Islands, and some of the islands, the Vanuatu bleeds into the Solomon Islands, which then kind of bleeds into the Papua New Guinea island chains. Fiji would be, I guess, to the east quite a bit, and then you've got New Caledonia to the west, but it didn't really ever get to be too popular there. And then it also spread down to Tonga and to Hawaii, and probably a few other places, but those are some of the bigger ones. Yeah.
Wow. Well, so okay, so let's get into a little bit more about kava.
Absolutely.
So we kind of laid the land as far as what the geographical picture of it looks like.
Yeah, and so Vanuatu is a very interesting place. It used to be called New Hebrides, and it's geographically very spread out. So you've got about 83 islands. I think 70 or so are inhabited. The total land mass is about the size of Connecticut. But imagine kind of there's quite a few of those islands that are I guess significant sizes, like the size of maybe a normal metro area. You'll have 30 miles wide by 30 miles tall or long, and so you don't feel like you're too shut in when you're there. It's kind of, some of these places feel kind of nice. And anyway, there's I guess if you want to think about how big this place is, the southern islands would be, if you took like Miami, That would be like the southern point, and then it would be spread out to like southern Georgia or southern central Georgia. So these are like, it's actually a lot of land that's covered by Vanuatu. But I want to tell you about the story of Kava that was told to me by the people very near to where Kava supposedly originated in Pentecost Island, Vanuatu. So according to them, there was a man who loved a woman, and some say it's the brother, some say it's a lover, and you had a man from another village who tried to steal this woman, basically forcefully bring her to his village and marry her or whatever. I believe the story goes that she rejected that and was murdered by the man. And the man who truly loved her wept at the grave. She was buried and at that location, and he just didn't leave the graveside for quite some time. And then he noticed this little plant start to grow out, and that was the kava plant. And he didn't think anything about eating it until he saw a rat one day eat the kava plant and then turn over and go to sleep. He thought it was dead at first, but then after a few hours, the rat woke up and went about its business, and it did it the same way every day. It would come by and eat some root. So eventually the man was very curious about it. And according to their beliefs, this was interpreted as a gift from the woman. So the woman had basically brought this to bring reconciliation and peace to the community. And so today, if there's ever a big decision that needs to be made, they'll drink kava. The men will drink kava and have a discussion. If there's ever a conflict, even if there was a war, and these are people that back in the old days before they were before the Christian missionaries came through, they would actually do some cannibalism. So, but this kava was something that would actually bring them back together even after something like that. Mm-hmm. So it's a very peaceful thing. Unlike alcohol, it doesn't really mess with your cognitive function. It's not a depressant, so it makes you feel relaxed without interfering with your ability to, do algebra and stuff.
Okay, so it's very calming, and it brings people together.
It's very calming, yeah.
But it brings people together in a non-dysfunctional way.
I would say you can drink a lot of it and then just not function very much. You just be so relaxed that you don't want to do much.
It'd probably just put you to sleep, or maybe put you into a state right before you would go to sleep. Maybe like a waking. I forget what the term is, but
people will drink
twilight, like a twilight state.
People drink it right before they go to sleep. A lot of times, it'll usually wear off after an hour or so, or depends on the person, but it's not super long lasting generally. So it's not this huge commitment that you're making to be like I don't know, just totally drunk on kava all night. You can drink it to go to sleep. A lot of people do drink it right before they go to bed, but it's actually technically a psychostimulant, so it doesn't really interfere with your mental processes that much, unless you drink a lot.
Do people ever have spiritual encounters when they've taken kava, or is it more of a type of a horizontal thing where it brings people together, or just kind of calms you down?
I would say it does bring people together. It's a very social thing. The place they drink it in traditionally is called a nakamal, and every little village will have at least a small nakamal. And the larger areas where many villages might come together, they might have a very large nakamal, which is like the size of a very large room. But just imagine thatch roof, and the structure might be made of bamboo or other wood. Mm-hmm. But the small ones in the very small villages, or like on little random hilltops, those will usually not even have walls, and you kind of you're drinking kava together. But the women are actually not allowed to drink it out in the islands. It's different when you go to the capital city and anywhere else. Women are free to drink it, but usually over there, according to their traditions, it's more of a man thing. And I think it goes back to the tradition of the woman being killed and her spirit being involved, and so.
Is it like a public thing? They're not allowed to drink it in the halls, or can they drink it at home, or they're not supposed to partake?
They're not supposed to partake at all, and it's they are involved in the farming of it. Mm-hmm. It is a very valuable cash crop to them. But from the women that I talked to, they're not really that interested in it. They've, and I don't really have much to say about that. But it is what it is over there, and it's
tradition. Yeah,
it's a patriarchal society as well.
So it would be kind of like how this isn't exactly a direct equivalent, but kind of like what pub culture would have been in Northern Europe.
I guess so.
That would have been very, very male dominated. This would be kind of like that, but this is again, this is like a less dysfunctional version of that, probably.
Yeah, for sure. I've never seen people get mad when they're drinking kava. It's just, it doesn't really happen. People don't get mad. They don't say things that they regret the next day. Mm-hmm. It's a very calming thing. It brings people together for sure.
So would you say that it calms the passions?
I would, and honestly, Vanuatu has the highest density, their capital city especially, has the highest density of kava bars probably in the world. They have between 70 and 100 kava bars in a city that's, probably 60,000 people.
Okay.
Oh, wow.
So it's kava, and some of these are very small, places where people just have like a window by the side of their house or something, and they're serving kava. But I think that might be, and the people that I talked to over there also agree that this is probably one of the reasons that they have the lowest crime rate in the South Pacific in terms of like theft and murder. There might be one exception or something, a very small country, but Vanuatu has 320 or 30,000 people and extremely low crime rates. But most people can't afford to drink alcohol or do other drugs, so kava is really it for them. They're growing it there, so it's very affordable for most people.
That's probably a good thing for them.
Oh yeah.
I was about to say this would probably be really good in the States specifically, and I'm not making a medical claim, so I'm just saying in the States specifically with the kind of lifestyle that we live in America, where even if it's not diagnosed, people are always so tense, so anxiety driven, such fast pace, right? We're always worried about so much. This could be a really good thing for people to just kind of just take a moment to yourself, like you said, or with friends, and just relax. Just like you said, it's not a huge time commitment. Just to ground yourself, to slow down a little bit and reset. I think this would be a good concept in the States. Did you say there's a lot of kava bars over here? Or?
So currently in Florida is the epicenter in the U.S.
Okay. Really?
Yeah, there's somewhere between, from what I've researched, between 300 and 500 here in Florida. It depends on what you consider a kava bar. Like a true kava bar that's like mainly doing kava, there's a lot less. But there's other places that you'll have. It's more of like a vape lounge, but it'll have kava and kratom but yeah, there's quite a bit. It's really taking off. It's starting to catch on in certain other states. North Carolina is starting to get big. Colorado, California, and it's had sort of a longer but slower growing history in Hawaii as well. I mean, it's got the traditional roots there, but there's not actually that many kava bars like we would think of them. Yeah.
So I've never been into a kava bar.
I've not either.
So I guess a question.
Well, you have today.
Yeah.
This is our little kava bar.
So we technically turned our studio today into a kava bar.
This is technically a pop-up
now,
kava bar.
So I guess a question I would have is, how when you go into when you go into a coffee shop, there's kind of a coffee shop look that you expect to see. There's kind of there's kind of the chain coffee shop that's very kind of pretentious and very urban, and then you have kind of like the mom and pop coffee shop that kind of, it's supposed to look like an old house, that rustic kind of old house thing, and they're supposed to have like the house-made pastries and stuff in there. So there's kind of a coffee look, and then with bars there's kind of the Irish pub look, and stuff like that. So what would you say there's a particular like a kava? Would you be able to describe what kava culture looks like?
Yeah, sure. It's really I think most kava bars are trying to go for some sort of a tropical or very laid back experience. A lot of times you'll have some like extra creativity, like I don't know exactly how to describe it. I think that there's a lot of variance. There's a lot of experimental minds that are behind the kava movement, especially how it's grown out today. Originally, the kava bars, I remember in Florida maybe 15 years ago, were mostly kind of like tropical, like, I don't know, like tiki hut vibes in a way. But they've really branched out. You've got some that it's you've got, I don't know, really far out kind of art. Almost makes you feel like you're at a rave. You've got other ones that are extremely chill. You've got others that almost feel just like a normal living room with a few decorations. Some of them you might have like a Tanoa on the wall, like this is a Tanoa. They use these in Fiji.
It's carved out of wood.
It's carved out of wood.
Okay.
Is that what it's supposed to be served out of, I imagine?
Yeah,
Okay.
basically. I mean, usually these are in Fiji. These are much bigger.
Mm-hmm.
Usually, this is kind of like a demo version,
Oh, got
just
it,
like
got
a travel size. It's the biggest one I could fit in my bags when I came back. But yeah, so it's a little bit tough to describe exactly. I would say they go for kind of a warm, bright feeling, very much a comfortable experience. There's not usually too many that you're going to go and you're going to feel like out of place because you're new there. They're usually welcoming. And most kava bars will actually give you a free first shell. From my experience, they want people to experience it. And usually when they drink it, they'll all say bula together. That's pretty common in a lot of them. But, it's been a while since I've been to the U.S., so I don't know exactly how it's been growing since I've been gone. But, yeah.
Let me ask you a question. Because I got like 1,000, sorry. What's the average, how many coconuts would one drink in like a sitting if you were hanging out?
So it depends on where you are. If we were in Fiji, we would drink probably 8, 9, 10 of these. Mm-hmm. If we're in Vanuatu, we're going to be drinking green shells. So this has been made out of a powder from the dried roots. In Vanuatu, they're not going to dry it and process it like that. They're just going to, they are going to process it somewhat. They're going to kind of shred the root, but they're going to squeeze it when it's green, which ends up with a much more potent product. It's probably about 3 times stronger. So in Vanuatu, they might only drink 2, 3, 4. Some of them drink more. Some of them drink 4, 5, 6. But yeah, it's kind of there's different types. There's different varieties also. Some of the varieties are a lot stronger than others. So Vanuatu is kind of known for being stronger.
Did they have, the real quick, Shane, I'll let you, are there different variations of, like you said, one, if it's directly from the plant, the way they process it or the way they extract it's a little stronger because it's direct. Are there different kinds of this? Different kinds of?
Yeah, to a certain extent. I mean, I would describe the variance within, like the variance of a lot of species, like tomatoes or something. Like you're going to have some tomatoes that are sweeter, some of them that are more sour, some of them that might have a little bit of bitterness or have more seeds. With kava, you do have quite a bit of variance. Some of them have like an acidic undertone or like a bitter overtone or kind of more sharp, more, I don't know, robust. And you have some that are way, way, way stronger. Mm-hmm. And there's some that they don't even really export because they're so strong.
Oh, wow.
And those are called 2-day kavas and 3-day kavas. And that's because they last that long.
Wow.
Yeah.
Whoa.
So
that's a commitment.
Yeah, they usually only drink those ceremonially now.
Where would this kava rank?
This would be in the class called noble kavas, which has been tested and through tradition and found scientifically to not have certain chemical compounds that are going to give you bad after effects. Like you're not going to wake up with a hangover, typically speaking, from a noble kava. Mm-hmm. They're pretty stable products for most people.
Okay.
Although in rare cases, people will have reactions to it. It's pretty rare. I've only met one person so far.
Okay.
Very cool. So I could have a second shell, definitely.
Yeah, for sure.
Oh, okay. Cool.
Oh,
I'm
yeah.
gonna have the second shell if you don't mind.
You'll feel, if you feel weird, then just keep going. Maybe stop actually, but it depends.
Thank you, sir.
Yeah,
He
no
said,
problem.
just keep going.
And I've got more in
Stop.
here. This whole thing is
And that is traditional too. That's actually made out of a special kind of wood that's from Pentecost Island, isn't it?
yeah. Yeah, I guess maybe they.
It's the same kind of wood that they make the Cybertruck out of.
It took them a long time to make the stainless steel exactly this way and to get the plastic. No, I don't think they actually have tar pits over there. It's there's not really many natural resources, which is one of the reasons that it's also it's on my list of top countries to escape to in the event of the apocalypse.
So one big thought that I have about kava, and I could be totally off on this, but just to kind of set the scene, the way that I view the system of control in the West is that our passions are manipulated. Like by passions, I mean like our yearnings and desires for certain types of stimulus, like to taste something sweet or to experience the effect of alcohol or lust and different things like that. Our passions are manipulated by the powerful to turn us into slaves, to prevent us from being able to build any kind of competing power structure with the power structure of the elites. Now, I don't want to go too much further down that rabbit hole, but I guess the thing that I find interesting about kava is if this is a way to kind of tamp down the passions, then this could actually be a drink that could usher in a new liberty for a lot of people, if that makes sense.
Yeah, especially because it I think the passions are good, but sometimes we can be, the emotions can be so powerful that they overwhelm our capacity for, coherent thought. So I think that it is a useful tool.
Yeah.
And,
the way I think about the passions is kind of like the accelerator on a car. Basically mashing the gas pedal on the car. That's important, and it's also fun. It's exhilarating and stuff. But then while you're driving, there also have to come points where you're not mashing down the gas pedal. And I think what happens is we are manipulated to always have the gas pedal mashed down, so that we can never navigate our lives in a way that's going to maximize our fulfillment, and it's going to make us, and it's going to allow us become the individuals that God intended us to become. So particularly in the West, I think a problem is that our true selves, that we've been overridden by our passions. And so I find this interesting because this is something that can help to kind of not suppress our passions, but to kind of normalize and bring our passions into homeostasis with the rest of ourselves.
Yeah.
I don't know if that makes sense. What do you think about that?
I think it makes it a lot easier to connect with people that you otherwise wouldn't potentially. And when you're in a society, that's pretty useful. But I think it can be overused as well. I've seen people overuse it where they start drinking kava at 2 p.m. and they continuously drink it until they go to sleep. And I think for some it can be abused like anything else. But I think as a tool, it's definitely a good tool to have in the tool belt. I think that if everybody drank kava, if we all could just mail kava to our congressmen instead of trying to write to them, and they just chilled out, maybe they'd stop funding all these ridiculous wars and
I was just about to say that. Could you imagine if there's before, let's say a village, you couldn't mass scale this, but let's say a village had an agreement amongst men, like an actual honorable agreement. Like if you and I had a conflict, before we let our passions run high, like you said, passion's a good thing, but I'm talking about in a fiery temper or something like that, we agree we have to have 2 shells and talk about it. And then after that, if we still have conflict after that, then it is what it is.
Yeah.
But I'm with you. I think if people could sit down and just, like you said before, or even if let's say your passion's with yourself, you have something that you're really thinking on, you're stressing about, and you have a couple shells of kava and you just think about it, I think it can bring clarity because it kind of brings you into that state of peace, the original story.
So you're feeling it. You're feeling a little bit, huh?
Well, I don't know. I'm just talking.
Well, yeah, because I feel it. It's weird because it has a reverse tolerance. So the more you drink it, the more often you drink it, the less you have to feel it. So it might take you 3 or 4, but for me, after 2, I'm already okay, yeah, you're describing my feelings right now. But so it's definitely valuable for that. and it's been used for thousands of years by this culture. It's really surprising that it's taken so long to get to like the U.S. and most of the world still doesn't know about it.
I wonder why that is. Do you have a theory?
I would say it's probably the alcohol lobby and the pharmaceutical lobby. They don't like competition, and probably they don't mind once they get a chance to invest in it. But I think Kava is kind of a mild thing, and it hasn't really caught on too much yet. But it'll be interesting to see what happens. You've got something that's not related, but in the sense that it's also an ethnobotanical kind of herbal drink. Kratom seems to pose a little bit of a threat to the opioid industry.
Uh-huh.
Mm-hmm.
It's been helping people get off of opioids, and so there's a lot of regulations coming down against that in certain states and municipalities. So we found that there's some states that are also very unfriendly to kava. For instance, Virginia, and most of those states also happen to be very large alcohol producers. But it's cool though, because with alcohol, I started noticing when I was in my 20s that sometimes I drink liquor and it makes me angry, like
Correct.
just for no reason. And this is sort of doing the opposite. So yeah.
So, just something that popped into my head. Have you ever seen kava? Would you say that kava has? Are people likely to get chemically maybe not necessarily addicted to it, but like get kind of hooked on it? And if so, how would you compare that to caffeine?
That's interesting. I would say that when people get hooked on it, it's more like stoners, right? So most stoners are pretty harmless. They might, but it's going to impact their productivity a lot of times. But with something like cannabis, it might make the person kind of distracted. With kava, it almost makes them so leveled and grounded that they're okay with not doing anything. It kind of puts people into a zen. Mm-hmm. So it can be a problem for people. Like, people will drink kava instead of providing for their families. I think that does happen over there. I've never seen Americans have a serious problem with it, but it also is because it's quite expensive in the US. Like one of these shells, if you go to a kava bar, like this amount is probably going to be at least $5. So, if you're drinking 4 or 5 shells, it gets, a little bit pricey.
I was about to say, I gotta imagine, because the logistics to get it here has to be costly, I'd imagine, correct?
Yeah, it's quite expensive to ship.
Well, and the thing is, when you're looking at a crop like coffee, for instance, you can buy organic coffee at the store. I only buy organic coffee. I know you only buy organic coffee. I'm guessing you only buy organic coffee whenever you buy coffee, Justin. But the thing is, coffee, it's such a high volume commodity. You never really quite know what the quality is of the coffee you're getting a hold of, just because so much of it's pouring into the United States. With kava, my guess is that you're more likely to get a hold of higher quality kava, just because it's typically going to be farmed on a smaller scale,
much smaller. Yeah, in Vanuatu, other than there are a few metropolitan areas. I guess you could call them metro. They're actually not. They wouldn't really qualify as that for most people, I think. But there's like a 60,000 person town and a 30,000 person town. There's Port Villa and it's Luganville. And then the next biggest town, I think, is like 5,000 people. And it just goes down from there. So there's 330,000 people living there, I think. The average person is probably living in a village between 50 people and 100 people. And you've got some larger villages, maybe 200-300 people. A lot of times you'll have villages kind of dotting the countryside, and those villages are associated either through a language, in a common language, or through a church, or different family bonds that they have. And so, you've got a lot of small farmers working together. It's you don't have monocropping, you don't have large scale farming equipment. At least I'm speaking about Vanuatu. I'm not exactly aware of every situation, but I think most of the Pacific is probably like this. From what I gathered, it's lots of small farmers pooling their crops, and then shipping them out to like a place where they're processed further, and in this case, just drying them and turning into a powder. Some of the people will dry them themselves, but it just depends. But yeah, it's extremely small. I would say that in terms of the quality, the reason that we've decided to go with Vanuatu kava is because the government actually enforces, or at least their guidelines are for people to not use any pesticides. So
That's incredible.
So
That's
it's
huge.
they're just relying on Mother Nature with these, and it's really something else to go and see the way they grow things. For them, like permaculture and gardening are just second nature. I thought I knew something about permaculture, and they will plant certain things at certain times to prepare the soil for something, and then plant something else after that. And they've got this whole system. They know exactly when to plant certain things. So, they're never just going out and planting kava. Usually where they're planting kava was formerly a taro field. It depends on the islands. They all have their different strategies, but, they're very, very connected with the land. Probably most of them are spending 2 or 3 hours out in the fields a day, maybe a few hours fishing if they're a guy. If they're a woman, maybe they've got some other things. Maybe they're sewing together roof tiles out of palm leaves. But it's a pretty relaxed life. They don't really have a lot, but they're pretty satisfied.
Mm-hmm. Now, what are there any other ways of consuming kava?
So you can so you can have the root fresh, ground. You can also you can create an extract out of it. You can do something called an instant kava, which is basically just like with a mechanical sieve. You basically you take what's been ground and you get the extremely small particles. There's also ways to do that through different water systems that can basically just get the extremely small grain stuff, so you don't have to spend much time preparing it. So this I spent about 15 minutes kind of like mashing this together in a net, and a very fine net, to get the I guess the kava lactones, the active ingredient, to come out. So yeah, there's instant kava would kind of take that process away. It would instantly, because you're dealing with the very small fine particles, they would instantly kind of get into the water, and you wouldn't have to really do much work to do that. But yeah, the extracts are also something. You're seeing extracts showing up in, I guess, like the opposite of an energy drink. It's kind of like a seltzer water and things that have kava in them, and flavored drinks.
So I don't know how long ago we took our first husk, but yes.
Feeling it.
Yes. The kind of like a relaxation, like a body relaxation, big time is what I'm noticing the most. But heard everything you guys said. I could repeat everything you guys said. No mental...
You're not feeling confused or...
Not confused. No, but just like completely relaxed, which is the complete opposite of like in my younger days, if I was to go smoke marijuana or something, completely different, to where...
Hypothetically speaking,
right? If younger Nico smoked marijuana, much younger Nico was to do that, it would be completely different, to where you could get that body high.
A lot of hypotheticals and metaphors and stuff that are being
You could almost
spoken
get
right
like
now.
that giddy, confused, kind of not like short-term memory loss, but kind of like losing your spot. Like you're like, trying to pace and be like, oh yeah, I remember what I was talking about. None of that.
Yeah.
Relaxation. I think I'm a fan of kava.
All right. You want some more?
Dude,
what are you on, 2?
I'm on number 2.
So he polished off number 2.
Yeah, I polished off number 2. Would 3 be okay, you think?
Yeah.
Okay.
Most people will drink, if we're in Fiji, you're drinking like, I want to give you a full shell. This is getting kind of low, so I'll have to refill it.
No, I'm good. I'm good on 3 shells, dude. I like it. That's Shane hasn't drank 1 shell yet.
So my question is, how do we get people like Larry Fink to drink kava? The head of the what's the
do you see the difference between marijuana and kava? See how confused you are? See,
So,
that was a joke. That was a
so-
joke. He does
so
not
listen.
smoke. He does not smoke.
Fun fact: I have never actually consumed marijuana
was a
in
joke,
any
joke.
form, literally or metaphorically. So
What am I supposed to say? Bale? No, bale.
Malok.
Bula. Bula kasha. No,
Bula
just
kasha.
bula.
Oh,
Bula.
here. We all need to turn to. We all need to turn.
Oh, you're actually gonna take another sip? Wow, I'm shocked.
All right.
All right. So what do I need to say?
Say you can say Malok, but you got to down the whole thing. That's the rule.
Yeah. So you can't say Malok unless you down the whole thing. So Malok.
I'll say.
Oh. You can't say
So
I actually put a little bit of marijuana in there just to trick you into doing it for the first time.
Yeah.
hypothetically speaking, of course.
Hypothetically,
Yeah, it's a
yeah,
joke.
not really.
Yeah,
not really.
yeah, yeah. So the thing is, what we need to do is get what we need to get Larry. We need to get Larry Fink to drink some of this. We also need to get what's the guy's name that's the head of the World Economic Forum? The really old the old German man whose parents were Nazis.
Schwab.
Yeah, Schwab. First name was
Klaus.
Klaus Schwab. Yes. Yeah. So and fun fact, Klaus Schwab's dad was a very very high ranking Nazi official.
Okay.
So,
Wow.
which in all fairness, most people that are in key positions of power in the World Economic Forum and in the European Union, especially the ones that have a German accent, a lot of their parents and grandparents were Nazis. So
I did not see that coming.
yeah. Now, what do you think would happen to the World Economic Forum if Klaus Schwab started drinking kava on a regular basis? And what would happen to BlackRock if Larry Fink started drinking kava on a regular basis? What impact do you think that would have on our world?
I think you have to have a soul for a kava to actually
I was about to
affect
say,
you.
I think.
But I'm just
okay.
kidding. It would be worth a try. I don't think anybody's beyond hope. For sure, maybe they are, but yeah.
That would demonstrate to us
if Klaus
whether or
would-
not they have a soul.
I
right?
would drink some kava with them and try in the effort of world peace, but I wouldn't hold too much hope for it. I do know some people who drink kava a lot, and they still manage to be assholes.
Yeah.
Okay.
I was about to
It
say,
happens.
from what I'm experiencing on my first go here.
You're still an asshole.
Yeah. Nothing's changed. As that is a fact.
Oh wow!
I think they would just very relaxingly make the same horrible decisions. They'd sit there for a while and be like, "I'm very relaxed," and then go make the same horrible decision.
I'm so relaxed.
Ursula
about
von der Leyen, who's the head of the European Union, her dad was a super high ranking Nazi.
Thank you, Shane.
Yeah.
Okay.
You know, and so that's the thing that keeps on bouncing around in my head is what if literally or metaphorically we could have had their parents consume kava.
I think I'm with him. I think they'd just still be assholes, man.
Okay. All right.
because at the end of the day, they still have their agendas.
Yeah.
You know, so even if they're feeling calm about it, they're still going to calmly
And calmly be
depopulate
assholes.
or create chaos so they can make profit off of pain and suffering of others.
Correct. I am with him. Like, it's worth it in the spirit of world peace and hope and stuff like that. But
Man, it's a damn shame that we couldn't get Alan Dulles to drink a whole bowl of this stuff. You know, the first head of the head of the CIA.
he
that,
needed
that
a
was
bigger bowl.
real
That would only be
asshole.
like 4 or 5
Yeah, you need a
shells,
bigger
right?
bowl.
Yeah.
Yeah.
One of the things that's interesting is because it was a former sort of colony of England.
Mm-hmm.
You've got many instances where the king and the queen of England will go down there and actually take part in these ceremonies. So, has it had an effect? I don't know.
That's really cool that you said that. I just thought about that. I don't want to misspeak, your friend or your acquaintance, you said their father passed away doing a ritual with kind of like a natural bungee jumping, correct?
Yeah.
That was the queen that just passed away that was down there?
Queen Elizabeth
I would
II?
imagine Queen Elizabeth II. It had to be, right? Because she was...
I have a love-hate relationship with her. with Queen Elizabeth II.
Okay.
Or
I'm
I guess I had. Sorry, I didn't mean to hijack that.
Your points are wild today, dude. They're just out of nowhere. You're like, and here's a fact for no reason. Like, okay.
But
Yeah.
yeah, did we go over that? Did we already mention that, or was that in the pre-show?
Dude, did we do that on the pre-show? Did I just act like that was common
It might have
knowledge?
been.
We did go over here. Just for the sake of context, go over it for the first time or again.
I think that was pre-show. That was my fault, guys.
Yeah, no. It's so one of the things that's interesting about the same place that invented kava also invented, I think it's called tree diving or something like that. They essentially build a large tower, maybe about 30, 40 feet up, and they have a ramp. So you've got a tower and a ramp, and they tie vines from the jungle on their legs, and they will jump off. And it's kind of a rite of passage for a lot of the guys. But I met somebody who their father actually died while the Queen of England was watching. So he didn't really take all the precautions in tying things as carefully as he should have, I think. He was kind of a little bit overconfident, according to his son who, or his grandson who heard the story.
It's probably something he's done 1,000 times. The Queen was there. He was probably, like you said, it's a rite of passage for most men. So he's probably, like you said, that confidence there. He's like, let me show her.
What
He might have had a lot of kava too.
Yeah.
what was that family's read on the Queen and any of the royals that were present that
It's interesting.
day?
Yeah, it's really interesting. So certain, I wouldn't say necessarily on Pentecost, but maybe. I think they have a high respect for them. There's one island, Tana, which they almost regard them like demigods.
Really?
Yeah, I mean, just extremely high respect. Like they view them as like, people that they really look up to, which I don't know how I feel about that. There was actually a really interesting miniseries called Meet the Natives. You guys should watch it. It's very entertaining. They have an American version and a British version.
You sent that to me, I think.
Yeah, I did. It's just really, really good. So basically, they take a tribe in an extremely primitive area and they bring them to the U.S. But this tribe, I remember when they went to England, like the Queen or the King wouldn't even see them. They just kind of like made them sit in the lobby, and they ended up not getting to see them. So it's a little bit sad. They have a lot to offer within themselves. And I think that one of the things about kava is that I feel inclined to do is to share the cultural aspects that they have that are very positive, that they developed over time. They're very content with their lives. A lot of them are some of the happier people that you'll meet, in spite of not having many material possessions. And they have a spirit of generosity.
In many ways, I think that's a blessing.
Oh yeah, I think that money. Too much money can be a curse. Obviously, like the love of money is the root of many evils. And when you don't have mass consumerism, and you have people working together, and they found a solution for not getting in fights when they have disagreements, it can be a really beautiful thing. But it's a hard life they live. Many of them don't have access to, acute medical care. Like if they're having a child and there's some problem, like they might lose the child because they don't have access to a modern clinic. Many of them don't. They're not able to send their kids to school, even if the kid is extremely bright and wants to be an engineer. That's just not on the table for them, for a lot of them. So yeah, that's one of the things we're looking to do with our new kava brand Turtle Hat is we're going to be giving back 5% of the sales to the communities where we're getting it, which will actually translate to much more than 5% of the amount that they sold it for. So it'll probably be more like 15% of what they sold it for. We'll give them that much more back so they can, if they need a clean water system or want to give scholarships in their communities or storm relief, disaster relief. That kind of thing.
What's the website and what socials can people follow you?
That would be turtlehat.co. And anybody watching this, we've got a discount code for you. That would be, let me look it up real quick. I just had him put this.
So
through.
turtlehat.co.
.co,
not .com.
And that would be a capital all caps KAVA 25, the number 25, Kava 25.
And that's 25% off.
That's 25% off. So you should do it. And some of that will go back to the people who are growing it in Vanuatu. But
Nico, can you promote that on rejected on all of your
100%. Well,
rejected
I'm gonna
feminine socials?
obviously be buying some of this.
Okay.
Instantly. I just fell in love with it.
Oh, wow.
And yeah, no, this is phenomenal. So I can attest, first time and a big fan. So I'll definitely be buying, and I will be promoting this as well if you don't mind.
for sure.
No, it's awesome. And real quick, I know this segues off. So turtlehat.co. I want to ask some questions about that. And then just remember segue question.
Here, you want to turn it around?
Nope. Question. It's just to remind me. Real quick. So, Turtle Hat. How did it come to be? Because now we're going to get into kind of knowing you a little bit.
My buddy Paul, who is one of the partners, he's always worn this exact turtle hat, which is really goofy. It's got like a scene of a turtle swimming underwater.
Mm-hmm. I like it.
And we kind of always made fun of him for it. And we were trying to figure out the name. And I was studying Bislama at the time, and I realized that hat in Bislama actually means heart. They would pronounce it hot. You know, you hot. Very
hot.
good.
Wow.
Right. So I realized that would be, but it was just kind of fun. We realized that, you know, we've all tried to do very serious projects, you know, different entrepreneurial things. And I think there's some value in not taking yourself too seriously. So we named the company after his hat. And also, you know, it could be Turtle Heart, depending on how you look at it. So.
Well, I love that because, like you said, people take themselves so serious now, and we've had many different business ventures over the years. Mm-hmm. Yeah. Some that have stuck, some that haven't, and it always comes back to that root of Shane's and I friendship, where we'll come up with our best ideas when we're kind of not. When we get around and we're like business brainstorm, all this stuff, we get the job done, right? But when we're kind of sitting around just being ourselves, and we'll just get. It's when our best ideas come, man. Best ideas. Yeah. And I imagine my best ideas will start coming with some Kava.
Now, what kind of turtle is that on the hat? Is that a hawkbill?
It's a sea turtle. Why do you know turtles?
I have no idea. You're a turtle guy?
Yeah, he's a turtle guy. Yeah.
And also another reason for turtles is because, like, who hates turtles?
No one.
Nobody.
Very few people.
Well, probably sociopaths hate turtles.
Sociopaths hate turtles.
Yeah.
I mean, even people who eat turtles love turtles. Right.
Here, if you don't mind, I'm gonna do a Google image search of that turtle to figure out
let's
exactly
figure it out.
what kind it is.
That.
But my money is that it is a hawkbill.
I don't know why you know that
Turtle.
Straws don't like turtles.
Straws. Yeah, that's true. That's definitely true.
Mario, also not a fan of turtles.
Yeah, Mario. He's so cruel. They paint him as a good guy.
Yeah.
And he goes around smushing mushroom people.
Yep.
And I mean, those mushroom people, like, they can't even all they can do is walk back and forth.
That's it. They have no weapons.
They're not a threat to Mario. He can just jump over them. Like,
he could, but he should just jump on them instead.
Yeah.
Yeah.
And then he gets golden coins for it. What kind of metaphor is that for reality? What have they been training us since we were kids, you know?
I would like to go on record and say that in no way is he a representation of all Italian people. So that's just one guy.
Are you Italian?
Yeah, that's just one guy.
I would say that he's a pretty fair representation of all Italian people.
I would say that Ronald McDonald's a fair representation of Irish people.
I would not agree with that because
clowns.
No. Because listen, Ronald McDonald was created artificially by a bunch of people that needed to be consuming kava.
Correct. That is actually true.
By a bunch of sociopaths.
All right.
So how much of our reality do you all think has been constructed for the social entanglement and the I don't know, just directing the fate of mankind? Like, how much of it do you think is kind of random and just, you know, people's imagination going wild and some idea happens, and how much do you think it is actually under control?
I'd say 85% of it is a construction of the powerful.
Like, what is an example of some of the things that you're most concerned about, with the control? Like, what are the most alarming things in terms of
media consumption?
Media consumption.
And in all forms of media. I don't mean just like news. media consumption. I think it's done very deliberately over long periods of time to normalize things. And I think at first it started off as a simplistic, so simplistic that if you blinked, you'd missed it. We all laughed. No one thought it was threatening. And then over time, just more and more and more, just to normalize it. And I'm talking, they don't care if it takes 20, 30 years.
Right, like how a lot of the old television was like very innocent, and they would tell like, very good morals, know, Andy Griffith, how can you like as a parent say, oh well, that's awful? It's actually teaching your kids good lessons. And then they just sort of turned up the temperature over the years. But what's the purpose? Are they they're
That is a hawkbill turtle, by the way.
it's hawkbill.
Hawkbill. Yeah.
Hawkbill. That's our mascot.
He wanted to interrupt you to say that. That's how important it was.
I'm so sorry.
But
I'm so
Shane,
sorry.
you'll notice the Kava guys are a lot chiller in this conversation.
Yeah,
You're really upbeat. Dude, you're actually kind of like throwing it off. I'm not
Sorry,
gonna lie. You're like up here, and I'm like, dude, you got to slow it down.
sometimes I can be a little intense.
Yeah.
But
Intense.
yeah, a little intense.
I didn't know you liked to camp.
Yeah. Clip it.
Yeah, clip it.
Got him.
Oh yeah. Continue.
So so you're saying media consumption, like the placement of certain trends that they want to happen, but what do you see? What do the people who are trying to do this, what do they want to happen in the next? I don't know. What's their end game, in your opinion?
The erosion of structure, and the reason for that is because when you have order, and I do happen to be a religious person. I don't know if you guys want to get on that or not, but when you have order and you have guidance, that's very direct, and it's there, and you kind of erode that over time, and it leads to disorder. When you have disorder, you have to find people in chaos will naturally look around and be like, there's no order, there's no structure. We need order and structure. So if you can kind of get the mold of the old, well, now it has to be replaced by something. And people in chaos, you've seen it when a storm hits, we almost lose all humanity. You know what I mean? When something devastating happens, people start running around and they forget, oh, wait, I'm a person with values, morals, and a thought process, and they become almost animalistic. So if they can erode away the order in the structure, it has to be replaced by something, because people naturally want to be like, whoa, let's get back to order and structure. Much easier to control those people and to replace it. In my opinion, I know this sounds very conspiracy theory.
I agree with it. And I don't consider myself to be a conspiracy theorist.
You need some coffee.
Sorry.
You're slurring because you're drinking
Sorry,
scotch. Because you're drinking scotch.
Sorry.
This is really good. We get to see the contrast, right?
Yeah. Yes.
But I think that's a pretty fair assessment. I wonder what I wonder if this is like how many cycles. And I think that, speaking of conspiracies, you've got people who think that like the timeline is completely shifted and like they threw in a bunch of stuff and like we have no idea where we really are.
CERN.
Yeah, you got people that think we're in crater Earth or flat Earth. I'm not really trying to go there, but like how often do you think they pull this? Do you think it's a wave pattern where it's like, okay, well, we need to trigger more wars and chaos because there's too many people now, and we want to. Do you think they're trying to be the masters of human evolution? Is that like, what are they up to here?
Wow, that went really deep. Shane, I'll let you hit this one off because I have some thoughts on it. But go ahead.
I think overall they're trying to make people slaves to their passions, kind of like what I said earlier. And when you make people slaves to their passions, they become slaves. When you have somebody that's helplessly addicted to corn, and I'm saying that word because I don't want for this video to be banned or whatever, but people that are hooked on corn, people
I just got what he was talking about.
Yeah.
Okay, same time.
People that are slaves to greed, people that are slaves to lust, people that are slaves to all the in the Western Christian tradition, we would call them the 7 deadly sins. In the East, they typically have definitions that are pretty closely aligned to those things that are considered to be taboo. And the reason that they're considered to be taboo is because these are things that enslave the person, that make it so that the person loses agency over their life. And I think the reason that the powers that be are trying, I think they're pushing these kind of things so that they can enslave individuals and make it so that they can reduce threats to their own power. And not only do you enslave individuals and prevent them from becoming who God intended them to be, but you also prevent the development of communities, because the real power in society comes communally. It doesn't typically come individually. When you see a very powerful individual in a society, they're typically the result of a very powerful community. They would be kind of like the apex of a particular community. Like take Donald Trump and take Joe Biden. You can take both of them, and because I don't want to offend anybody.
That's the first time I've ever heard you say that.
And it's probably the last too. But the thing is you take somebody like Joe Biden. He's the representative of a community. He's kind of the visible apex of a particular community, of a social structure, and Donald Trump is the same thing too. And I think overall the powers that be are trying to atomize people, and I think the way that they've found that they can successfully atomize people and prevent people from coalescing into communities that would challenge their power is by making them slaves to their passions. If that makes sense. I know I said a lot of things there.
You asked a question, so what's your thought on that? Because that's a very unique question. That might actually be one of the better questions that a guest has ever asked, actually.
I didn't describe an end goal. I just described a process.
Yeah. So I think...
Or you even believe in that?
Yeah, I mean, it's something I think about a lot and have a lot of conversations about. And I think that there are certain elements that have been with us for a long time that, human elements. Possibly, more than that. But I think that there's definitely a plotting beneath the surface of most people's awareness. And I think you see certain signals of it being, you'll see little patterns that add up to, I think, different ways they communicate. Like you'll see, I remember during the, this is going on YouTube, right?
Yeah.
During the, what was it called? The cerveza type situation where there was too much cerveza. It's like a cerveza virus.
The jab?
Yeah. You're talking about the jab? You're talking about...
I'm specifically talking about that crisis.
Okay.
And
talking about the Kung Flu, or...
Yeah, the Kung Flu. But you had a lot of articles around that time that you'd see the number 33 in there. And it's almost like, what? That's interesting. Another 33. Like, I wonder why. But it's like, secret coding. And I think the more you look into some of that stuff, it's...
the number 11 is
the
a
number
sacred
11,
number to them, too.
The number 9.
Yeah.
And so, like, I think there's different... There are people playing games, beneath the awareness of most of the, what do they call us, profane masses. And I think that's pretty fascinating. And I try to see it from their perspective too. But I think it would be much better if we lived in a situation of meritocracy where, we allowed people to, I guess, have a place that they create. The people that are not contributing as much are not going to be rewarded as much. But what we have right now is it's going farther and farther away from that. And I think part of it is meant to sow chaos as well, because when you have a system that's not fair, it's going to make people frustrated. And so I think I see this separation where it's you have this. It seems like both sides are being infiltrated. So Democrats, Republicans, left, right. Mm-hmm. And I think that most people underestimate the capacity of people to hold on to their power. So if you've got a very powerful group, they're going to look for every way. They're going to be 2 steps ahead because they have the resources to do so. They can hire analysts and think tanks, and they have all these people plotting, well, how do we maintain our circle of influence? Well, we have to get involved. We have to, subvert every possible avenue so we can control it. So it's very frustrating, I think, to me, and I guess many people who think about this, so what is the purpose? Is this like some sort of a wave function where they're trying to, they create wars so they can get rid of, loyal alpha male types that are willing to make a sacrifice for their community? Mm-hmm. Are they trying to slowly whittle us into this, neo serfdom that's like technologically controlled? And I think, it's an interesting question. I think, I would like to have a conversation with these people because I think that there's better ways to do it than, the way they're trying to dominate the world. But I guess the follow-up question that I have for you, so I don't really know the answers. I find it interesting and fascinating, and I try not to get too overwhelmed by it because, if you're under a state of stress, you're not going to be able to even adapt to it as an individual to avoid the consequences. Because I think what's going on is, in part, they set up these games. Well, they're not games. Real people die in their wars and their whatever. But I think they believe that they are the masters of the human evolution. So they're trying to they're artificially setting up situations where the weak will be killed off, or those who pose a threat to them will be killed off. So eventually they'll have a both strong and, I guess, non-rebellious population, and they can maintain their power forever. And that's where I think we are. But I think that when people become powerful, they tend to become arrogant, and that arrogance is kind of one of these passions that can make people, I guess, prone to mistakes. So I think this happens over and over, where you have, I don't know how long the cycle goes, but I think that you've got people that they figure out how to concentrate power, but eventually, because they've concentrated so much power, and they don't have any belief in a higher power, they eventually make mistakes because they think they're invincible, and then the thing crashes and it comes back. And so I think we're reaching that pinnacle where they're making their final move, and that's going to crash, and then we'll have a chance to, after the chaos, after the forest has been burnt down, you'll have the seedlings kind of coming up. So I think it's an interesting time to be alive, for sure. But
I agree with that.
It kind of seems to me, and I know this is going to sound kind of crazy.
Okay.
But it seems to me that there's a pattern in human history that goes all the way back to the very beginning, where you have humans. You have a small percentage of humans. You mentioned like alpha males. It's typically it's always alpha males that are able to coalesce what we would call like a tribe around themselves. That they have some kind of superior courage and some kind of superior ability to organize other people, and other people are just inclined to want to follow them. And then we would say that they end up founding nations. Now, what ends up happening, in my opinion, is you have this class of people that tend to be extraordinary in the sense of being able to get people to follow them and organize society and everything, and people are happy with what they do. Well, they tend to accumulate material wealth into their hands, a lot of it, and then I think what happens is they begin to kind of ask the question: what's the meaning of all this? What's the purpose? I mean, I'm at the top of the mountain here, and it's pretty lonely. I mean, I don't really see what the purpose of all this is. So I think what tends to happen is they begin somehow consulting with I guess what you could call the other side, with beings that do not have bodies, that are just pure spirit, that Christians would call fallen angels, Muslims would call them jinn. I'm pretty sure that Buddhists and Hindus, and I'm pretty sure that everybody has a name for these, like malicious, disembodied spirits. And one of the ways that they will end up encountering them is through some kind of like phytochemical means.
Interesting.
They'll consume something that we would call like a psychedelic or something, and they'll consult them, and then the message they end up getting from them is mutilate people, kill people, sacrifice people, create these crazy rituals where, like in the case of the Aztecs were off their rockers, wild. There were days where they would murder 88,000 people. Well, not in one day, over a 3-day period. That's one of the reasons that when the Spanish got there, all the non-Aztec tribes formed a coalition with the Spanish, and they wanted to overthrow the Aztecs because the Aztecs were basically harvesting all the population. They were harvesting all the non-Aztec population to sacrifice them. And the same. And this is the thing: human ritual sacrifice is universal, and the thing is, there are very, very dear people to us that will talk about René Girard, and I fully agree with René Girard. If you don't know about René Girard, go look into him, read his anthropology. But the thing is, in all of these societies, whether it's the Aztecs, whether it's the Visigoths, I'm guessing it would be the case in Southeast Asia, they will say the people that originally told them, that instructed them to carry out ritual human sacrifice were disembodied spirits that they encountered, usually through some means of taking some kind of phytochemical, right?
That's very interesting.
So that's the trajectory that I kind of see. And when you think about the world that we're living in, that's cracking up right now, the post World War II world, you look at who were the elites in post World War II. The elites in the West were typically Americans and Brits. Like the Dulles family, the Rockefellers, the Carnegies, the descendants of J.P. Morgan, and all those kind of people. And when you look at what their descendants got into things like seances. They got into taking psychedelics. They got into all these things so that they could encounter spirit beings, because these are people that were at the top of the mountain, right? These are people that felt isolated at the top of the mountain and said, "There's got to be more to this than meets the eye." And for some reason, these people also adopted the notion that we're going to reject Christianity, because we're going to reject that because this whole thing about the purpose of my existence, the purpose of my body is to will the good of other people. I'm going to reject that. And I think the reason they want to reject that is that it calls into question their accumulation of material goods. Because the thing is, if you're sitting on a whole bunch of wealth, and if you're sitting on a whole bunch of wealth and you're not sharing it with other people that need it, if you have the means to help other people that, let's say, are sick and dying, and you decide not to, the Christian message is something that you're going to find very problematic, right? And I know I sound like a proto-Mark. I know I just threw a lot of things out there, but what do you guys think? I'm done talking for a while.
It's interesting that the message of Jesus was kind of the opposite of that. It's like, if you hoard your wealth, then you're in danger.
Yeah.
Right. And I think that it's tempting if you're, I can imagine myself being sitting at the top of the totem pole of power and just thinking, well, maybe I'm here because maybe my family has been chosen. And I think that's, through history, you've got a lot of kings and leaders who that's exactly what they thought. And, from the Japanese to the British. And I wonder, there's a lot of things that can be at play right now, which I think don't get talked about very often. And it might be, for a specific reason. But it seems like there's more than just chemical. I think chemical is one of the things that opens up certain psychological pathways, maybe spiritual pathways. I wonder how much of it is potentially parasitic, different, yeast or even worms, who knows? But another one is the ELF weapons. And you look at a lot of society and how things are functioning, everything from schools to the medical system to sports, professional sports, and it's like there's a lot of this that seems like it's almost like a military system for pacification and control. And they get us in these illusions. Like, I think, looking back at a lot of these wars, they just don't make any sense. World War I and World War II, it's like, why would they really fight? They didn't really have, the general population didn't really have a reason to go do this, and yet they were all driven into such a passionate situation that they were willing to go kill people that were essentially their neighbors that had very similar values. So it's very interesting. And like today, I think people underestimate the ability. Like we're in 2024, like they've been working on, voice of God technology since the 60s. So imagine what they can do with AI and being able to bounce frequencies off of the electrical grid, potentially putting voices in people's heads or, messing with people, giving them symptoms of certain things so that they're going to be perceived as crazy. So people will discredit them. Yeah. You just wonder, how much of it is under this sort of hyper control. And yeah.
I'm with you on that. So I actually want to hit both points real quick. One, Shane, I agree with you. Naturally, we keep talking about these higher up elites, right? But let's take it on a personal level, right?
Yeah.
If you look, one of our first things that we want to do is you have your family, right? You're in charge of your family. And you're like, I want to make sure my family has enough resources. And then if you can, you try to move up a chain to where you can even give enough resources for your family and maybe like your friends and your community, right? But you want to start getting these resources to make your family in a better position. So you start hoarding these resources and this wealth. And with that, usually if you're successful enough at it, comes respect and power, right? Like the ones that are most successful at it. So first comes these resources, this hoarding of wealth and resources, and then power. And the next thing you want to do is you just realized, I just worked, you're an old man now, right? No matter what time this is. If it was earlier on, this would be in your 50s, let's say, or 60s. And now it's in your 80s. And you're sitting there and you're like, I just worked my whole life and I built all this. I want to make sure it goes to my descendants, right? I want to make sure that my labor goes to the fruit. The whole reason that I work this hard is to make sure that this next generation and then you see your grandchildren in that generation can have this power. Well, once you've solidified that and you got that, right, we're taking this on a smaller scale. The next thing you start doing, you start realizing I'm at the end of my life. Now we all have the truth, so we have a different thing, but these people might start, especially if they're super, super successful at it, as soon as they solidify that their offspring are going to collect their reputation, their power, and they have their wealth, the next thing is they're like, wait, I'm also mortal. I did all this stuff. Is that really enough? And like you said, they start flirting with the idea of what if, like, not necessarily I could live forever, but like they start flirting with these weird ideas if they don't have that truth. That they know, you know what I'm talking about. So they'd be like, kind of like that idea. And my second point on that was I think that could lead to like occult stuff and stuff like that, communicating and questioning like your own morality and how do you become, not, like I said, not immortality, but kind of like that, going into that realm of it. And that next thing, oh my God, we had the second point. You just went off it about the voice of God and stuff like that. We have examples of that, of the passion that can arise for something so innocent. What were we calling it? The salsa virus? What did you guys say? We're joking about it.
Oh, the
cerveza.
Cerveza. The cerveza virus. Sorry. Yeah, the cerveza virus, right?
I like that.
When that was a hot topic going around, I like to think of myself as just, I like to learn, and I like to keep learning, and I'm cautious in some scenarios. And I was like, you know what? Before I take the jab, I'm not anti-jab, right, on things. I mean, I had cancer. Modern medicine saved my life. But what I am anti is it not being studied and not making sure that it's safe for human consumption. Even now, we got to take that to the best of, is the medical industry being honest, dishonest, all this stuff. But I was like, you know what? I'm not going to do it. I would like to wait and see how this plays out. And then maybe I could jab. Everyone here has been jabbed, or we wouldn't have been able to go to, kindergarten.
Yeah.
You got to have a certain thing. So everyone here is that before we leave the hospital.
And then like seventh grade, I
reject-
think they require you to get.
I think
boosters,
before we
right?
leave the hospital,
they
we
required-
have like 20 different ones we get before we leave
like
the hospital.
hepatitis and all kinds of
So
crazy
it's not
stuff.
that I'm anti these things necessarily. It's I just want to see, hey, I'm going to step back and I'm going to let it play out.
Yep.
And then maybe that's something I do 2-3 years from now. The rate at which I was demonized publicly because I just made that one statement, I lost friends over it. Like they unfriended me. They called me a murderer. And I was sitting there and I was thinking, what could make someone so passionate about something that we know very little about? This is 3 months in, 4 months in. Because when did it hit the States? February, March of night. So this had to be
March 13th.
June, July.
March 13th, 2020 was one. It was Friday the 13th.
Okay.
It's interesting, isn't it?
Yeah, interesting.
Yeah, Friday the 13th, 2020 is when it really became big news, and that's when they started saying we're going to have to lock everything down next week.
I was demonized. I lost friends. I had someone make the statement to me that if I was to go to the hospital and someone else that chose to get the jab was to go to the hospital, that I should die and they should live. And I was thinking, why are they so passionate about something that we don't even know about? And all I did was make the statement. I wasn't anti. I wasn't carrying a flag. I just said, I would like to observe and see how this plays out before I commit to putting something in my body that we haven't tested.
Yeah.
I find that, so your point exactly,
Well,
interesting.
okay, so here, I want to. Are you finished? I'm sorry.
Yeah. I just
here.
wanted to hit both your points.
So I have something very brief I just want to throw in there, and then I want to turn it over to Justin. So I think you have people that do really, really well in society, and in our culture, it'll look like having a big bank account and owning a lot of assets, but in a tribal culture, it might look like owning a bunch of, controlling a bunch of land, or owning a bunch of chickens, or owning a bunch of cows, or something.
Resources.
Yeah, resource exactly. Now this is the thing. When you get beyond the number of resources that are necessary to ensure the provisions for your family and the provisions for your immediate descendants, I think a level of guilt starts to set in with people. And this is a very uncomfortable conversation, but I think a level of guilt begins to set in with people because I think people innately know that when they have more than what they need and when they have more than what their descendants need, and they see other people that have less than what they need, that there's this like natural urge that they would have to help those people, but they've been trained to suppress that urge, and it'll end up manifesting itself in all kinds of in what we call like mental illnesses. It'll end up manifesting itself in all kinds of in all kinds of crazy things. They'll become ideologically possessed. They'll become like Marxists and all kinds of things. But the thing is, then, okay, here, one last thing. Then what will end up happening to them is they get caught up in all kinds of wacko rituals and stuff to try to justify them having more than what they need and more than what their descendants need. And they get into all these things to try to justify them holding on to all that stuff and not helping the other people that have less than what they need and that need help.
Okay. Yeah, and I think one of the basic premises of their philosophy is if people are gullible enough to fall for something, then they deserve it. And so I think some of them, not all of them, but some of them will start to lay traps for other people or different requirements for other people so they can dehumanize them so they don't have to deal with the reality of their guilt. It's a really interesting point, but I think it plays to the normal average person. It doesn't have to go all the way up the chain for that to happen. And it's interesting to just look around, modern middle class America, and how much comfort there is, and how people kind of almost deaden themselves to the reality of what the most of the world is like. I don't know how to tie this back in, but I wanted to ask you all. Okay, so if we could, like, imagine that you knew there was going to be a terrible apocalyptic event, but we could go to a place like Vanuatu or Solomon Islands, and we could find one of these uninhabited islands. Mm-hmm. How do we recreate something? Like, if we were the ones that were to seed a new civilization, like what are the primary principles, other than just just what are the primary principles that we would need to prevent these cycles of building up wealth, but without turning it into like a communist system where everybody owns everything and there's no privacy, and how do we do that? Is it just a function of reality that we're always going to mess it up, or is it possible, do you think, by certain rules?
I would say one rule: ban usury.
Okay.
You ban it altogether.
Right.
There is a reason why you go all the way back to Sumeria, and you can progress all the way through all the large civilizations in human history, whether they are civilizations like ours that are money based, or you can go back to like Persia, Babylon, and Sumeria, and Rome and Greece, which were slave based. They all, really, up until like the Renaissance, they all had a fundamental understanding. Usury is dangerous because usury is fundamentally it destabilizes society, because what you do is you end up creating one class of people in society that are able to profit and make money off of doing nothing. Mm-hmm. And what that does is it unfairly draws resources away from the productive people, and it puts them into the hands of the unproductive. And it ends up destabilizing things. So that would be one cardinal rule that I would put in place. Nico?
You know what? I never actually thought about it like that, Shane. You're right. Because we use the word, it allows unproductive people to profit off of productive people, mm-hmm. because they're using past labor, maybe not even their own, past labor of someone else that built this wealth, and now they're turning around and they're just, the only thing they're sacrificing, you're 100% correct. Even if it was, I've never thought about it.
No. So here, I'm sure a lot of people are going to be asking, well, if people, because by usury, what I mean is charging interest on loans.
Correct.
Right. So now a lot of people are going to be thinking, well, there's obviously a natural need for loans, so like, let's say that you got one farmer who needs to expand they need to expand their barn, mm-hmm. and they need to borrow resources from someone else in order to do that. How do they go about doing that? Well, what I would say is whoever they're borrowing the resources from could take some kind of an ownership stake in the new thing that they're loaning the resources for the purpose of expanding the productive capacity of the other person. So maybe what they would do is,
because they'd have a vested interest, right, in the success of that person. And that, I hope I didn't come across, because I was in thought, because I've never thought about it like that. I hope I made that clear. Yes, because they would have a vested interest in that being a successful enterprise. Mm-hmm. If they didn't, it could fail, and there's only two options. If it fails and it goes belly up and there's nothing left for me to just take from you outright at pennies on the dollar, right? Yep. I might have not invested anywhere near the amount of money. You would still owe me my money plus the interest.
Yeah, but so let's say that you have a barn, you need to double the size of it,
correct,
in order for you to become more productive. And I'm the neighboring farm. I happen to have a whole bunch of extra lumber and stuff, and I'm going to loan it to you. Let's say we're not even dealing with money. Let's say we're dealing with a very primitive kind of situation. I loan you the resources. If this were a more complex society, I would loan you the money, then you would go buy the resources at
Correct.
from a lumber yard.
But
or
I'm just
something.
giving you the wood.
Yeah. Or I'm giving you the wood.
Oh, you're giving me the wood.
And then you're going to double the capacity of your barn. Now let's say a month down, and let's say the agreement that we make is that for the next 5 years, I'm going to get like you're going to give me like 20% of the additional productive capacity from that barn until I'm paid off, and I'm going to make a little bit extra off of it. Like it wasn't all just because I'm running a charity here. Now let's say the thing is you run into a problem. Let's say
disease spreads on my farm.
Yeah, something like that. I'm going to have a vested interest in making sure you're successful. Because the thing is, if I'm just loaning you the resources and then
The only way you're getting them back is if I have the surplus of resources
Right.
to give you the 20%.
Because the thing is, operating under the usury model means if you fail, I get to repo your shit.
Yeah, you get my whole
And then,
barn.
So the thing is, the incentive for me is that you fail, because then I get then I get to repo all your stuff, and then you become you and your descendants basically become serfs.
Are you calling bankers parasites?
Yes.
Okay, so in our island, on our apocalyptic island, I think we can agree. I mean, of course, I've thought it like. It's just the way that you phrased it. I really like that. It was like an epiphany went off. I was like, I like the you said the unproductive to the productive
And guess
people.
what? The whole Muslim world see things the way that I see them.
I really like
as
that.
far
So
as
no
this goes.
usury on
And the
our
whole
island.
Christian world used to see things this way prior to the Renaissance, too.
I could get behind that.
Yeah.
Get behind that on this island.
You know, there's actually an opportunity to plot in that direction. So some of us are having a conversation about this on Telegram. Anybody out there, you can message t.me/Vanuatu info if you're interested in talking about these things. There's none of us are going to be going out there to do this anytime soon, but we're kind of just talking about it. Like, how would we do this? But these are really good answers. t.me/Vanuatu info. You'll see an account that'll link to me, and we can have a conversation. And there's a few groups that have started for that, but
Yes, please.
I think it's interesting to have these conversations just in case something happens. Then we'll be in a position to say, okay, well, we've thought about these. We have our new, I don't know, Bill of Rights or whatever you want to call it. We have our objectives. We've identified the things that have failed in the last world. And, there's a lot of, Fiji, for instance, half the islands in Fiji, there's like 200 islands at least. And it might be a lot more than that, but I know half of their islands are uninhabited. And some of them you wouldn't want to live on. Their elevation's too low, or it's just a coral reef and there's no way to grow things on it. But some of them are actually pretty doable. And I'm not suggesting we go and colonize a place and kick people out. But I mean, there are places to go still. And I think most people, when you talk about how bad things are, they're like, well, there's no other options. Everywhere in the world is going to be affected in this. And yeah, that's true. But if your value system is not primarily money based and concentration of power, and you're actually you would like to have a peaceful life, I think it is possible to avoid it. And that's actually a Christian principle. When the days are evil, the wise man flees, or the wise man looks for opportunities. That's a paraphrase, but it's I think we're approaching the days where there's like this buildup of, and people can kind of feel it. And maybe right now people are kind of relaxed or elated that the political situation is what it is.
Yeah.
But yeah, there's a lot of karma that's been building up, with these banker funded wars and different events. So it just makes me think, well, maybe it would be good to hedge the bets here a little bit. But that's the original reason that I went to Vanuatu, is due to my family being my family in-laws being Taiwanese, and just kind of looking for a place to go, just in case China takes over. And then when I was there, it's like, wait, there's a great opportunity here to do trade and to help the people there. But yeah, that's thanks for the comments. I know you're supposed to be interviewing me, but I just thought, you guys are smart, and we've had conversations like this before.
Yeah.
No, I've really enjoyed this. That's fascinating. And like I said, this stuff is amazing. So,
Really chill, huh?
yeah, I will definitely be promoting the heck out of this.
Now-
I already got like 6 people I can't wait to tell about it because I know they haven't tried it, and this is right up their alley with me. Shane, I'm pretty sure there's some frowned upon culture for you not finishing even one husk or one coconut worth. Yeah. Thank you.
More. Wow. Yeah, he's embraced it.
I have embraced it. You not even doing one.
These are coconuts, not plastic bowls.
Yes. Yours might as well be nothing because you haven't finished one.
Oh.
You just got to finish one. That's,
Hola.
maybe you'll finish that at some point today.
Well, so I think it's really important that we, a lot of the things that we've mentioned tonight. I think it's really important that we talk about these things because I think
Pause because we never said. So sorry.
Okay.
I will forget. I'm not gonna lie. I thought this was gonna taste so nasty. It does not.
No.
It tastes fine. I was expecting. Just call it ignorant. I was like, oh, this is going to taste not probably pleasant. It tastes just fine.
It reminds me of a very mild tea. It's not.
Have you guys ever had kratom tea?
No.
It's gross.
Yeah.
Like it tastes. That's why you have to put like flavors and stuff in. Most people don't.
Is it bitter? Is that what it is, or
it tastes like pickle and feet to me? And everyone says I'm crazy.
Okay.
But it tastes gross.
And if I have more than 7 grams of that, like I'll be nauseous for the next like 4 hours. But with kava,
of kratom,
yeah, of kratom. Okay. But with kava, like people a lot of times confuse them because they're both sold at kava bars. But like with kava, it takes a lot of it to usually make somebody feel any kind of queasy.
Okay.
If it's green kava, if it's actually raw root, it might get you there faster. But you can kind of easily pace yourself with kratom. Sometimes it just catches up with you, and all of a sudden it's like, ugh.
We'll usually get a large tea and then go golfing. So we'll be drinking it on the way to the golf course and then the first couple holes. And like you said, if you drink it too fast or too much, or even the elements, you're just kind of like, this
of kratom tea.
Yeah, it can do weird things. And like I said, the taste is not there. This taste, if you look at it, you're just like, it looks like I'm going to be drinking some dirty water, and it tastes just fine. Very pleasant. I was very shocked, and I really like it.
Why do you think all the royal families of the world have Rh negative blood?
Okay, we went there, huh?
Sorry,
I don't know. I actually am one of them, so I don't know. Maybe I have some insight.
You're Rh negative?
Uh-huh.
So am I.
Okay.
No, you're not.
Do you think it's
yes,
like
I am. Yes.
So one thing that's interesting about Rh negative blood is the fact that I believe the woman, an Rh negative woman, will reject an Rh positive male, like if half the time, I think.
Does it have to do with the smell?
No, it's the first time is okay, but then once it's something to do with the blood mixing in, like during the physical like labor. I believe there's a high risk that the second child will be aborted from the Rh positive. So Rh negatives are almost like according to that definition, they're almost on the border of being a different species because like what makes a species different. I'm not saying like a superior or something, but I'm saying like there's a little bit of a barrier for them to breed together, which is kind of interesting.
Well, that's cool because I'm just so positive. So
Okay.
yeah, isn't that the most basic one?
I think is that the universal donor?
I believe so. Well, yeah, I think so. Maybe or just
because I'm O negative.
Yeah, I think O negative might be the. I'd have to. I mean, I'm not an expert on this stuff, but and I could be completely wrong with what I'm saying, but I believe there is that kind of there is a possible danger. And with modern medicine, it's not an issue. You can take certain things that will actually block that. But back in nature, maybe the Rh negative people somehow realized that, and they sort of started to collect themselves.
Why does it seem, or
because they noticed
not seem, but why is it that all the royal families of Europe were Rh negative.
Rhesus negative. I don't know if it's really rhesus. I think they share that, but I have no idea. Do you have any theories on that?
No.
You were right. They reject. It's a very commonplace thing that it's hard to have offspring after a second child.
Just like in nature, like the people that had Rh negative would have noticed that, if you want to be back in the old days, having a lot of children was a sign of success and, blessing. So, if people, I guess there's a natural selection that would have happened, if a man only has one child with a woman, then, that would have been seen as kind of a substandard marriage back in the days, probably in a lot of cultures. So there would have been a propensity, you would have, the families that didn't have that, the Rh negative pure ones would have kind of taken over the population just naturally, just by numbers. And their offspring, the offspring of a big healthy family, would have probably been seen as a better prospect for marriage, maybe back in those days. I don't know, but like if a woman is having a miscarriage for whatever reason, and then they only have one child, I don't know. I'm not sure exactly how the medieval world worked, but I can imagine that these kind of things have had impacts.
Speaking of that, because you just went off topic hard, I'm going to round back real quick.
Sorry.
When we were talking about your friend whose father, when the Queen said, you said they almost had this kind of like, and I don't want to misquote you, this almost like this demigod feeling with these people. Well, I have a friend, or along those lines, I don't want to misquote you. There was this like awe.
Very high view.
Yeah, there's
very
this
high
awe
view
of these people,
Yeah.
right? I have a friend, and he said his grandfather, he's from Africa, and his grandfather, they said they had, I can't remember which, oh man, I don't remember which political figure it was. A high up political figure went over, and there was almost this, like the whole town just like came to him because white people were so rare to see, and literally said it's the only reason his father, so his grandfather was there, and the whole town gathers is big. It's the only reason his father moved to America. They almost have this, like you said, this awe at like
Whatever's different.
Yeah, it's so different, and they talked about America and the riches and stuff. It's almost like this concept that's so foreign to them of how the lifestyle they were describing, they couldn't even comprehend it, where there's plenty of stuff. It's the ease of life, this kind of stuff. And then he says he still goes over there and he has family. And he says, in a way, like, he loves America, right? He loves everything he has here, all the stuff. He goes, but then he goes and visits his family and he looks at their lifestyle and he goes, in a way, it's almost like you got to take the pros and cons of two lifestyles, because he's like, they're so happy all the time. And he goes, and I find myself here, right? He's very successful. He's in the medical field, makes good money, takes care of himself, does stuff. But he's like, I find myself worrying about like things, and it gets me down. I'm depressed. And then I go and visit them, and I'm like, he thinks of all the stuff he worried about over the last year. And he's like, none of it was even important. And these people are so happy with the life they do have in the resort. You know what I mean? They're just kind of,
Well, that's the thing.
the community.
That's the way humans were intended to exist.
Correct.
As a part of a community. And the thing is, you mentioned World War I earlier. In the whole post-World War I and especially post-World War II world, we isolated the nuclear family away from the community to try to make the nuclear family into its own little island in and of itself. And the thing is, that's not the way humans have ever existed. Clearly the nuclear family has always existed, but the nuclear family has always existed as a piece of fruit on a tree connected to all the other branches.
Correct.
And the branches connecting then to all the other pieces of fruit. But it seems like what happened at the end of World War II is we tried to cut everybody off from everyone else. And we moved everybody out to the suburbs. And I think the intended reason for that was, if you have if you have nuclear families existing in a community interconnected with other nuclear families, they're not going to need a whole lot from the outside. They're not going to need to go to the store and buy a whole lot of stuff. You know, I mean, they're going to need to buy certain food goods and stuff like that, but they're not going to find it. They're not going to feel a need to go out and buy a bunch of brand new little convenience consumer goods. But when you isolate them, that becomes the new norm. Is the way they exist is by maximizing efficiency by buying this brand new little time saving egg beating device or something like that.
Yeah.
When prior to that, the men would go and work, but then typically there was a very dominant female culture where the women would usually get together and would do work together. In fact, it's still this way in the countryside of a lot of European countries like Italy and France and stuff, where like in Italy, in the countryside, a lot of women will get together and they'll bake bread together for everybody. They'll make a whole bunch of pasta together.
Correct.
They will tend to their gardens together and everything, and their husbands will be out doing the back-breaking work, or their husbands will go out and be working at a factory or something like that. And that's the natural state of humans. It's interesting. In fact, anthropologists and sociologists and psychologists have actually done a lot of studies into this. The human mind is actually optimized to have about 200 other people within your inner circle. That is where your brain is optimized, and you will typically not face things like depression and ADD and all kinds of stuff when you have a high number of people in your inner circle.
When your tribe's big enough, yeah.
Yeah, that's interesting because that number, that 200, is probably actually satisfied, like that 200 and under, to where every person in Vanuatu, I mean, not every person, but every person out in the villages and these remote islands, they don't have an overwhelming oversaturation. But it also is interesting because to note that when you don't have above that number, when you don't have thousands of people working together, you also don't have a lot of the civilization. You don't have enough people to actually run the mill to create the thing to do this, and then that, because you don't have that, you can't build this. So it definitely is an interesting thing to think about. If we were to create a new civilization, how do you what would we prioritize in terms of inventions? Like, would we be able to create stainless steel? Probably not, unless we had maybe robots working with us. But it is interesting to see people in Vanuatu and to consider how, they were voted the happiest people in the world 2 times in the last decade, I believe.
Really?
Yeah.
I did not know that.
And I experienced that.
Not surprising.
I would say it's probably true. Yeah, but so I have a question for you. So you said something about investment instead of usury. But wouldn't it be possible for investment to result in labor-free income and a concentration of wealth? How do you mitigate that? Would you have to have some sort of rule that, I'm kind of curious, because in Vanuatu,
give me an example of something.
So if I'm the person who I'm not doing any usury, but you want to start a business and I say, okay, well, I'm going to invest in you, or I'm going to give you this much money, but now I have a vested stake. Well, if you do that to enough people and you make enough smart decisions, I guess you could say smart calculations, you had to put in mind effort, or maybe there should be a reward for being so smart. But eventually, if that's done successfully over time, you could accumulate so much wealth through all these shared assets, or these shares in these companies, that you would actually be able to exercise authority over people based on your you could actually accumulate wealth that way too. And I just wonder, maybe accumulating wealth isn't necessarily the worst thing, or that actually gives us the capacity to then invest in that person who has that accumulation of wealth, could invest in something else that really helps the community. But I feel like that's a good starting point. I just want to before we start this community, we got to figure this out.
Okay.
Every nook and cranny, boys. I do agree, because what if this guy over time, or his descendants, let's say they are partners in all 8 sheep farms that are on this island, and now they have 20% of sheep coming from every single farm on the island. They're not doing any labor now because they've already given the wood, right? And now they have sheep coming 20% from all 8. So now they have all these sheep, probably enough to rival one of the farms, and there's no labor in it. You know what I mean? Mm-hmm. So they can keep getting all these resources. And now I can be directly competitive with these sheep farmers, and I don't have to lift a finger. I can start my own sheep farm, and I'm not raising one sheep.
So 2 things.
Which I don't think is necessarily a bad
Right.
thing.
No,
Okay,
no,
so
yeah.
this is for me, because I think the whole community wins in this scenario in a way, and I'll go ahead.
So first of all, I think we have to understand that there are norms that will typically set into different situations, and in our, particularly in the West, in the Western world that we were all born into, there's this notion that that business is transacted by companies and corporations, and that companies and corporations are immortal. There's no sunset on them. Prior to the invention of the modern corporation, which really didn't come about until the late 19th century, because there were corporations prior to that, but corporations always had a sunset. They always had an expiration date once they accomplished a task, like building a bridge or building a building, or conducting some kind of conducting some kind of trade that had some very specific purpose, and that had an expiration date or some kind of metric that
Or
would
a
end up
voyage, once a
terminating it.
voyage was
It's like
completed.
a charter model, right?
Right. Yeah. So when the corporation and the trust ended up being separated from the notion of there being a sunset on it, an expiration date, or some kind of just some kind of an expiration. It may not be a particular date, but like you said, when the voyage is done, the corporation is now disbanded.
Once they dissolve,
Yeah.
yes. Once you dissolve the partnership.
But I guess the thing in my mind that I'm thinking is, in this particular kind of a community, you wouldn't have this notion that transactions are conducted by an immortal legal entity. You would have the idea the norm would be that the business is transacted and production is done by, maybe not by one individual, maybe by the collaboration of individuals, but it's done by people. It's not done by some legal entity that was put into being by signing some kind of piece of paper. So the idea would be that whatever deal we work out at sunset, whenever you pass away or I pass away, and that would end up becoming the norm.
Oh, it cannot be passed down to descendants.
Well, it may be passed down or it may not be passed down, and then there may also be some kind of an agreement, because remember that the most common form of contract in human history, it takes the form of what we would call like a covenant, and covenants typically have duties and obligations by both parties. So let's say you will give me 10% of your sheep flock, but in exchange for that, I have to help facilitate. I have to help you be successful at the same time.
Yeah.
Right.
Okay.
So the thing is, there's a situation where both parties are collaborating. This notion of one party extracting from the other, that's socially acceptable in our society, but today, but I don't think that's the natural order of things. And
I do believe that. Yeah, what you're saying with the corporation model has definitely distorted reality. There's no accountability. Like for a company like Pfizer, for example,
Yes.
they had the largest fine. Tremendous fraud that resulted in the largest criminal fine of history, but nobody went to jail for that.
Right.
Nobody had any kind of real justice. And the company was worth, whatever, $100 billion. So $2 billion, it's not going to hurt them that much. It's it's painful, but it's not going to really do that much. So yeah, I think having individual responsibility and accountability within that whole tribal system would be pretty beneficial. Or here's one thing we could consider. This is what they do in Vanuatu. When the chief dies, the next person to become the chief is the person with the most pig tusks. That could make it very simple. Whoever hunted the most or took care of the most pigs or traded for those things. So it's like a race, who can get the most pig tusks. And not to mention, pigs are kind of like...
That would be you.
They're an invasive species too, so it's actually a valuable thing for the environment. So all the people that are concerned about that, fulfills that requirement too.
Well, and I also think the dynamic... I think the dynamic is different because I guess again compare our society and our societal norms to that of a small community. In a small community, everybody has to face one another. You have to look the other person in the eye whenever you're getting together when you're getting together with their male relatives to drink kava together. You have to encounter them face to face. They have to encounter you face to face. That makes it a lot more difficult for you to shyst them. Now, when you're dealing with an atomized society like ours, where there's this anonymity, that's kind of the norm, where you go to the grocery store and you really don't know anybody there. You may run into somebody or something, but on most days you walk in there and you're totally anonymous. You don't know anybody there and they don't know you. That is a situation where I think it makes the environment much more inviting for someone to shoplift, or for someone to do something that's not socially acceptable.
Well, there's no consequences socially. Your social credibility doesn't really default because even if I commit a crime, an infraction of some sort, usually the majority of people I have interactions with will never know I even committed that crime.
Right.
So the social currency doesn't really calculate into that.
Yeah, and the thing is, there's no flesh and blood to the artificially contrived corporation whose name is on that grocery store.
Correct.
Like just to use an example as a national brand, like Safeway, for instance, you're not going to encounter a flesh and blood human being named Safeway. You're just not going to. That's an artificial abstract contrivance. And when we're talking about a small community where everyone knows one another, they're going to have every incentive in the world because they would feel shamed and embarrassed if they shysted someone else.
Yeah, and you can notice that. So living in Taiwan,
look at the Amish.
Yeah, it's an isolated community, and they even speak German, the Amish communities. But like Taiwan, even though it's such a big island, you still have that phenomenon where people, they know that it's you can't commit a serious crime in Taiwan and expect to leave unless you get off on some fishing boat, and people do. But for the general population, they know that if they commit X crime in a different city, even like that photo, they'll be identified probably, and their family's going to find out about it, their community might. It's interesting in Taiwan because it's not part of China, it's not part of the communist China, but people hold each other accountable in a way that we don't really over here, even in such a big country. I remember seeing a sign of somebody, their face was put on the outside of like a laundromat, and the sign read roughly in Chinese, like basically, whoever this is, please don't leave your trash in the laundromat anymore. But this is a relatively small town, and that was probably enough for that to get back to his family to say, hey, look, why are you doing this? Like, you're hurting our family's reputation.
Us,
yeah, it's like, we raised you better than this. And over here, you don't really have that. They've kind of encouraged us, like going back to kind of one of the midpoints of the conversation is like, they've atomized us. And when you're atomized, you don't have that connection. You don't have, and other people they don't have a big incentive to, I don't know, to manage you. There's too many people. It's overwhelming. But yeah, when you're on an island, even like I think being on an island, you can't really escape that easily. But Vanuatu is a much smaller place, so that's another reason there's probably less crime is because what are you going to do? Your crimes will follow you eventually. But you do still have people who have accumulated enough wealth to be able to buy off politicians and police and things like that. So it's not a fail-safe thing. I think you do have to kind of monitor the accumulation of wealth without being I don't know, communist or whatever. But
well, what I would argue is, and of course, there is no such thing as like a perfect system or something like that, because humans are fundamentally imperfect. Mm-hmm. But what I would argue is that if you prohibit usury, you greatly reduce the ability of the anonymity within the economic system to sit in, if that makes sense.
Yeah, banning usury and corporate anonymity. And some people have said that this health situation where there's like a health insurance guy that got a CEO that got murdered recently.
Yeah, Brian Thompson, I think was the guy's name, right?
Some have put forward the argument that was actually an inside operation, and they've pointed to the unibrow. The unibrow doesn't match in the photos from before and after.
That's right.
But they mentioned
the facial structure really doesn't match either.
Yeah,
it's similar.
So they mentioned that if this is a Ponzi, if this was not a Ponzi, a patsy, it would have made sense for them to do that in order to normalize the need for corporate anonymity, so that all these CEOs don't have to show their face, so it can be even more so or less accountable. I think that's a plausible explanation.
That is brilliant.
Not to mention, during the cerveza virus, they kind of started calling certain types of people who didn't like certain things or violent extremists. So this kind of goes along with that whole narrative too. But I thought that one point is kind of interesting, because that's one of the leading problems is that corporations are able to shield people from having consequences and having to answer to their neighbors. They can just
I couldn't agree with you guys more. One, they actually have corporate legal structures set up that way. So you can set up certain legal structures with a Nevada corporation through a holding company that's owned by like a living trust or a will. Mm-hmm. You'll never find out who owns that company. Like, they're not even public figures because they're not publicly traded companies. So there's no accountability to where they have to release their names. You'll literally never know. It could be the unborn heir, right?
Right.
So no consequences. And to your point, this is kind of one extreme to the other. Sorry, it's just you both raised such good points. To your point, if we were in a small town and let's say you had a very loose woman with her passions, and there's only 200 people in this town, and she's chosen to bed 10 of them, she's probably not finding a husband in that town. You know what I mean? It'd be very hard for her to, because he's going to have to go around and be like, maybe my friend or my cousin or someone I know, and they're going to be like, So it'd be very hard for her to obtain a marriage.
And her family will put a kibosh on it because they'll say, you're bringing shame to our name.
You're bringing shame to our family. What are you doing out on these streets? And you could use that. I just use that scenario. There's a million scenarios you could use here where you have social currency and you are expected to a certain standard. Let's say you and I have a business, or a deal, not a business deal. You and I have a deal, and then I back out and walk away. Do you think in a town of 200 people, 2 days later, he's going to do a deal with me? No, because my word doesn't mean anything. But you expand that.
In 25 years, he probably still wouldn't do a deal with you.
But exactly. But you expand that to millions and millions and millions of people over a large swath of area. No one's going to know what my word means. Only my local circle. I can move out of that circle easily.
Yeah.
So I agree with both of you guys.
Yeah, they say an armed society is a polite society, but a transparent and small society is also a polite society. People
Correct.
they're just going to behave because they know there's not really any other option. Mm-hmm. It's kind of interesting.
You ready for something crazy?
Yes.
Okay. So the world prior to World War II, America prior to World War II was very much a mosaic of micro communities where where like you take urban settings where a lot of Italians, a lot of Irish, a lot of Germans settled, like in New York City and Boston and in big cities and stuff. Most of the time you would have like several blocks would all be people from that would all be immigrants and descendants of immigrants from one country. Like they would all be Germans, for instance. And English would be spoken in that community, but the primary language would all be German. And the foods that were sold in all the little corner stores and everything would all be German. It would all be German food. Like you could buy like Wiener Schnitzel and all that kind of stuff. And you'd probably have like beer and stuff like that available. Then you would have the Italian neighborhood that would have Italian restaurants and Italian food, wine and all that kind of stuff. Anyway, World War II. I want for you to really think about this. World War II was among many things. World War II was in many ways a social engineering project because you drafted all these young men to go fight in the war in Europe, and in the process, you propagandize them to disassociate themselves from the little community that they came from. Like let's say a 19-year-old Italian American who came from a little Italian block in Brooklyn, New York. He goes and fights in the war, and he's propagandized to say, "You are an American. You are not an Italian American." So when he returns home from World War II and he gets the GI benefits and everything, he is now disassociated from his little local Italian neighborhood, and the government is giving him a low interest or maybe even interest free loan to go and move out into the isolated suburbs, and he becomes a homogenous, anonymous individual in this brand new consumer system in America that totally ruptures the relationship between that generation that fought in World War II and their parents in a way that had never happened in this country before.
And to add to that, they also, they're victorious, so they have every reason to be prideful about what they just accomplished. But they saw all these other countries failing. They saw France be defeated by Germany. They saw, the Netherlands be defeated by Germany. They saw some countries ally with, Germany, which was demonized after the war. They saw the Russians became communists. They saw the Italians, they were defeated. They saw the French kind of had to cave in, and the Spanish were in chaos. So they got to see all this. They got to experience all these failing countries that they came from, and now their country is the successful. And so, it's very interesting. Social engineering.
And in many ways, I think that is the primordial ooze that the world that's all cracking up right now for us. And when I say world, I mean America. This system that's cracking up now is the system that was put in place, or the system that was socially engineered into existence during World War II. And for our generation, and I'm talking, we're all millennials. We're all roughly the same age. For our generation, you look at the things that are really trendy and popular. A lot of people in our generation, which a lot of people in our generation are broke, but for a lot of people in our generation, they prefer to patron local businesses.
Correct. I've noticed that.
Boomers love mega chain restaurants, mega chain stores and stuff. And I'm not saying millennials don't, because millennials will go to Applebee's and stuff like that. But millennials will, if they're given a choice of the local coffee shop or Starbucks, a local restaurant or Applebee's, millennials are much more likely to choose the local mom and pop, locally owned place over the chain, especially in comparison to boomers. And the World War II generation and stuff like that. They're, in many ways, I think our generation, and I think our generation has a lot of trouble putting it into words, what we desire and what we're trying to do. I think in many ways, our generation, we want to create we want to create a community around us that we call home. You know, in a way that we never had, that would have been either a distant memory for for the generations that preceded us, or may have been something. That would have been a distant memory for the generations that preceded us, that kind of went along with the propaganda and social engineering that followed World War II. But like you said, the way it was sold to them was, you were victorious, and these are the fruits of your labor. It is this whole new society.
You know, almost like something in our DNA is bringing us back to this.
I know,
This
The
point.
natural.
And like you said earlier, it's exciting to be alive right now.
Very exciting.
Yeah, I remember my grandmother. All she would grow is flowers. Yeah, bless her heart. She was an amazing woman, but she didn't want to have a garden because she was always forced to have a garden. Back in the 30s and 40s, and so now that she's an adult, she doesn't want to do that. But now I'm like, wait, I like this. This is part of my roots. Like, this is fun, free food. Like, you plant a mango tree, and 5 years later, you've got hundreds of dollars of mangoes falling out of the trees every year. But it's interesting. And that kind of does give you hope that there is something within us that is seeking alignment.
And this is the question I think people should ask themselves: is the post-World War II, the socially engineered post-World War II America, is that the norm, or was that an anomaly? And I think most reasonable people will say it was an anomaly, and it's cracking up now. It's falling apart.
I do agree with you. It's such a funny concept to think. I have this avocado tree out here, right? I don't do anything to this thing. I don't water it. I don't touch it. And I probably, and this is no joke, I probably get 150, 200 avocados just falling to the ground every year. I can only eat so many avocados, right?
You've never once offered me avocado so we can make guacamole.
Yeah, me neither.
So you can have all the avocados you want. I would rather them rot on the ground than give you an avocado.
I will come over here and take them myself and make a whole buttload of guacamole.
I literally, yes, anytime you want, come get them.
I'm glad one of you all is drinking kava, because if you were both drinking alcohol, this would be like Irish and Italian, like
I know,
mafia just going at it.
And the Irish are always better too.
Yeah, this is highly inaccurate. You watch any movie ever.
What's the number one restaurant in the world?
You're going with the McDonald's?
Yeah.
So the Irish have killed more people than anybody.
I was not going there.
Poisonous food.
But the thing, I'm just saying,
good job.
the number one chain restaurant in the world is an Irish restaurant. So
you don't hear about Olive Garden killing people.
Well,
so
hopefully RFK Jr. is going to be fixing it. Hopefully RFK Jr. is going to force McDonald's to start frying beef tallow.
Also, Olive Garden's not an Italian restaurant. It's piece of shit. But
no, I'd say that's an Italian restaurant. Go ahead.
To his point, I got these avocados falling off the ground onto the ground. And I'll go into the store and I'll see like a bag of 6 avocados and how expensive it is. And I'm just thinking like how easy it would be just to have a couple of varieties of different things. Like if you just had a couple chickens and just other stuff, and my neighbor's next door garden, they could grow different stuff and then we could just trade. And we would only have to go to the store for like stuff that we obviously don't do. Like we're obviously, him and I aren't going to slaughter our own cattle and stuff like that. So we go buy meat from the store, milk, stuff like that. But anything else like eggs, avocados, I'd have several other varieties here. There's nothing in my backyard, right? Everyone's so proud of these backyards that we have in America, these front yards and backyards, and we do nothing with them. Think about it. In all honesty, if you have, let's say we each have 50 friends right now we can think of, and all 50 of them, the ones that own houses, how many of them are honestly growing stuff in their backyard in America?
Not many of them. If they're millennials, I would say they're more likely to be growing stuff. If they're boomers, they're definitely not growing anything productive.
Not growing anything.
And they're going to see that fruit falling on their yard as attracting,
bugs,
evil creatures and maybe rats. And it's not like there's going to be anything that's going to prey on those, and it's not part of the ecosystem. It's just going to be, but I think it is pretty interesting. Before I left to go to Taiwan 5 years ago, I planted a bunch of fruit trees in the front of my yard. Just I don't know. I kind of did it because I wanted my mom to have like a little hobby, and I planted a bunch of raised bed gardens in the back, and it actually works. She really enjoys it. So it's
That's great.
That is
but
awesome.
I would say that the front yard. I would challenge people, plant fruit trees in the front of your yard so that the neighbors see it. And you can give some of the extra fruit to your neighbors. They're going to be like, oh, cool. And they might not plant fruit trees in the front of the yard, but you're going to have more people planting them in the back of their yard. And eventually you could do that kind of situation. But actually, it was very crazy. I never expected this. 2 people within a few houses on the opposite side have also planted 10 trees in their front yard. And if planting fruit trees in your front yard is really like, people just don't do it. But it's a really good space. But I thought it was cool. It's like just me being kind of like a weird rebel, like planting fruit trees, and people at first seeing it as an eyesore, and now people copy it. Mm-hmm. So it doesn't take a lot to have that kind of a neighborhood change.
That effect, yeah.
And that's just one thing. I mean, fruit trees are kind of just one thing. You could talk about generosity and just being connected to your neighbors, and
You're 100% correct. My neighbor over here came and knocked on my door, and he was like, hey, I don't just want to take avocados. He's like, but there's like ones that are ready to go that have just fallen on the ground. And I was like, dude, you can take as many avocados as you want. I could not possibly eat that many. I would have to eat 5 avocados a day for like the whole time this thing's growing. I'm like, I'm simply not doing it. He's like, I can have as many as I want. I'm like, yes. He's like, well, I have family that would definitely enjoy these. He's like, do you mind if he had a clothes bag. He's like, do you mind if I like fill up a basket? It's like, fill up 2 baskets, man. So he came over, took 2 baskets, walked away. You wouldn't even think he touched my tree. That's how many avocados are in there. And it made his world, because he told me he came back like probably a week, 2 later, I don't know. And he's like, my family loved them. We're still eating them. And like, just like you said, it was that simple. I don't do anything with that tree. It just grows them. So it's that generosity, that kind of neighbor thing. It's that easy.
And there's probably a much higher chance that in the next 5 years, he's going to start growing some trees in his backyard.
He already has 4 trees.
Yeah.
And they're all fruit trees.
Yeah.
Yeah. He just moved in 2 years ago. So they're getting kind of to the point where they're actually looking like little trees and stuff now. Yeah, he planted orange tree, and I know he has an orange tree, and then something else, and then something from his country that he's growing. He's Guatemalan.
He'll probably offer you fruit too.
Absolutely, and it's that easy, just like that. That's what I'm saying. I don't know. I think it's a really cool concept, and I think hopefully more people go that way.
Yeah, it's interesting to think of, like, I wonder how much social engineering was put into getting our grandparents' generation to not want to garden. Like, I mean, those ideas just didn't pop up. I mean, like, there must have been some sort of reinforcement by these advertising companies. Like, look, you can buy canned food. You don't have to garden anymore. You can refrigerated food or frozen food. And so I think we have to be very mindful of what types of messages are getting into us and what is the motive of those messages. I mean, a lot of times just to sell us something, but it could be more. It could be...
Well, it's interesting you say that, because I've thought a lot about my grandparents' generation and, like, growing up in like the 50s and 60s and, being in your adulthood in the 50s and 60s. And I mean, it would kind of seem like all hope would be lost to live in a kind of like a small community oriented way where you kind of know everybody. I mean, because that would not be the trend. The trend would be toward the big, big corporations, consumerism, the whole the individualistic, the whole anonymous way of living. That would have been on the downswing, and I think in many ways that would be like. I think that would be a very depressing world to live in. I mean, now, right now it's very easy to think to look around and say, wow, this is very depressing that eggs are almost becoming a luxury good in America and all this stuff. But the thing is, this system, this socially engineered post World War II system, the whole thing's cracking apart. And it's exciting to think about. It's exciting to think about the fact that that it's, it's not going to be easy, but it's exciting to think about the fact that we may be moving back toward a system that's more in line with the way humans are meant to live.
Possibly.
Yeah.
All right.
Yeah, getting back to family values and families in general, and yeah, it's pretty interesting conversation. Yeah, I didn't expect it to go in this many directions.
I love it.
Yeah.
They all kind of stuck kind of around each other in that little circle, though, but they all branched off, and then they kind of like worked their way back around.
Yeah.
No, I enjoyed tonight, boys.
Me
That
too.
was awesome. And
fun.
hopefully we get to have you over again, man. This was...
Yeah. Well, you're going to be in town for a while, right?
I'll be in town for a while. Yeah, and I wanted to have a conversation with you about roach milk.
Let's do it.
Yeah, so we got a plan for that.
Yeah, let's
dude,
do it.
yeah, that was one of our like very first ones.
That-
So
that-
would
You
be
did a whole
awesome.
episode on it, huh?
Not one of our first ones. That was our first.
Oh, that was
one.
our first one,
That was the
cockroach
opening one.
milk.
Yeah,
Yeah,
I mean, gosh.
But
dude.
we used the wrong camera though, so it only captured like 20 minutes of it, and
Yes,
and you were gabbing away for like 3 hours, I think.
So you're a roach milk expert too.
Yeah,
Oh yes, yeah.
he's a roach milk connoisseur.
Yeah, I like different kinds of it.
Yeah,
I mean, but speaking of that, just going full circle with the end part of that, it's like the programming to get people to accept that is already put in place. They're already transitioning people to that, and nobody even knows about it. They won't know it until it's already in the product.
yeah.
Cricket burgers, roach milk.
Yeah.
It's like what are you guys talking about?
Yeah.
Like what are we doing?
The best thing, dude. Listen, I believe it's all one giant humiliation ritual.
Oh yeah.
There is no there is no reason to try to convince people to eat roach cheese.
Did you guys-
there's no reason for that at all.
Did you guys ever see that meme where it's like it's an angel and then it's just God's voice and he's like, "What are they doing down there?" And he goes, "It looks like they're drinking milk." And he's like, "Oh, from which animal?" He's like, "No, it's not from an animal. They're drinking nut milk, for like almond milk." And he was like, "What? I gave them like 7 different animals they could drink milk from." And he's like, "Yeah, they don't like that kind." And he flips the table and he's like mocking them. He's like, "They don't like that kind." It's the same concept. Like, what are we doing to where we've evolved so far to where we're like, we just make the most wild stuff? I think I'm with you. It's got to be by design.
Yeah.
You're gonna make people drink cockroach milk out of like, what is it? It's dust crystals that they break down, right? Well, I don't remember the exact science behind
Yeah,
it. It's like crystallized.
long story short, what they do is they feed the roaches a particular type of feed that's got chemicals in it that makes the roaches lactate. That makes the roaches lactate a crystalline milk. And then they somehow collect that crystalline milk, and then that's what they turn into the roach milk. And then they plan on turning it into other dairy products and stuff too.
And they will sell this as some great humanitarian, egalitarian effort to be like,
it's crazy.
Everyone
It's
jump
crazy.
on board. If you're a moral person and you love the planet, you have to drink roach milk. And people would just like we were talking about earlier with the I keep wanting to say the salsa virus, man.
Yeah, cerveza virus.
Cerveza virus.
cerveza.
That people are going to be like, "You're a piece of shit because you don't drink roach milk.
Yeah.
You're a piece of."
And that's just it. Yeah. And there's all these micro humiliation rituals that lead up to that, like everything from like the way people are treated in public schools to, the programming they get on television to say, "Oh, well, there's too many of us, you're bad for the environment, but,
I think one of the big, if I were going to describe our culture today, I would say that our culture today is all about normalizing trauma. 100%.
I can agree with you because I know where you're going with that. Yeah,
Yep.
yeah.
You just mentioned the school system. You get children attached to a particular teacher, during a school year, and then once the teacher and the students have developed have developed a rapport where the students trust the teacher and the teacher trusts the students.
You rip them away.
You rip them away, and
send them next one.
that whole community, that whole world that's based on that relationship, which is actually real. Once that's all been developed, and this element of trust has set in, and you rip it all away. It's like a little miniature apocalypse, and we're dealing with children here.
It is a crazy concept.
Have you ever thought about that?
Yeah, I felt more comfortable when I was a teacher at a school where they had the 6th, 7th, and 8th grade all kind of had the same teachers rotating through. I think it was a much more healthy model because they had more stability. But even that, even
that was a Christian school though, wasn't it?
Yeah, I mean, honestly, communities raising their own kids as a community is definitely the most healthy way because then you still have that support structure. Now we just go send people to go study things in college that they probably won't actually use in their career. Go to a totally different state and just figure it out.
Well, and the thing is, sending them off to college, sending them to the public school system, it's all about perpetuating the social engineering, the World War II era social engineering. And you notice now the whole rebellion is against people going to college, against sending your children to public school.
Isn't that a weird concept to think like I'm going to leave my whole support structure and everything I know to move 10 states away to go get an English lit degree?
That's crazy.
Like that just sounds wild to me.
Yep.
Like
it's crazy.
The whole concept. And like you said, imagine if that's how we met. Like I was just like, hey, I'm Nico. And you're like, I'm Shane. I'm like, let's be friends, but only for 8 months. Hey, like, what? Or 9 months, whatever it is.
And then
we're done.
Yep. Then once it hits an expiration date, it's over.
Like I might
the friendship sunsetted.
I might see you around town and say hi, but we're never going to be friends again.
Yeah.
Yeah, so I like that. That's pretty
That's
cool.
insane.
Or just every job you start, just go to your boss and be like, hey, 9 months and I'm out of this hellhole.
Yeah.
I'm going to a new job. Like, I don't know. It's wild to me. But yeah, good one, guys. I like today.
Yeah,
this was
me too.
awesome.
Yeah, for sure.
Once again, guys, plug it, Turtle Hat.
turtlehat.co for the Kava. And you get a 25% off coupon if you type in all capital letters Kava and then the number 25.
Kava 25.
Kava 25.
Yeah, so
perfect.
Beautiful. Man, it was an absolute pleasure. Thanks for doing this today.
Thanks a lot, guys.
Yeah,
we will be doing this again.
Yes. Shane?
For sure.
All right. Love you guys. Have a good night.